Originally, astrology was the only way that people could describe what was going on in the sky, because we weren't really able to apply the scientific method to astronomy just yet, because other civilizations out there, one, they're so far away from us that we might not be able to communicate with each other. And if you were to go to another planet and it had life that was complex, breathe and interact, it could kill you. And you might be low on water, you might tremble a little bit. You had an empty jar and you had sand, pebbles, and water. You put the rocks in first, the big things, the things that are important to you, like family, God.
So how's the water buffalo?
3, 2, 1. Hey, what's going on, guys? Old School Matt here, back with another Water Buffalo Training Method podcast. Today, we're joined by James Albury. He is the planetarium manager at Santa Fe College. James is also an astronomer and a good friend of mine. He's also a very seasoned veteran bodybuilder. So without further ado, here's James. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit.
Hello, everyone. And yeah, as Matt says, I'm James, and I'm not only the manager of our planetarium, but I also co-hosted the TV show Stargazers on PBS for 9 years with Dean Regas from the Cincinnati Observatory. And one of the other things that I've been passionate about in my life is fitness and weight training. And I competed in my first bodybuilding competition when I was 28 years old. So, and then I eventually won an overall title when I turned 36. So I think we'll talk a little bit about some of that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Because I'm very impressed with what you guys have done with Water Buffalo Training Method.
Thank you, James. I appreciate it. Yeah, me and James met. I don't remember who showed me your Instagram. I think it was Jack. He goes to Santa Fe. I don't know if you know who Jack is. I forget his last name. I think he's the one who told me about you a little while ago.
Del Rios Brooks, I believe.
Yes. I used to work with him at the mall. But yeah, he introduced me to James, and me and James have been talking through DM, and James got a very interesting career path. I mean, I know there's a lot of astronomers out there, but you don't get to really talk to one every day. And there's a lot of cool things that personally, on a selfish level, I want to ask you just to see, get some cool conversation out of. So we'll just dive right into it. So we actually talked on the phone the other day because we were supposed to do the podcast like about a week ago, but our schedules didn't really line up. And I was calling James an astrologist, but not an astronomist. So real quick, James, if you could just explain the difference, because I didn't know the difference at the time. And kind of tell everybody what the difference between those two are.
Okay, because it happens often that astrology is confused, or astronomy is confused for astrology, because you have geology, you have biology, you have herpetology, which is the study of snakes, and paleontology. So it just makes sense. You're talking about the stars, astrology.
Yeah.
But originally, astrology was the only way that people could describe what was going on in the sky, because we weren't really able to apply the scientific method to astronomy just yet, because we didn't really have the scientific method. But so people used astrology and the motion of the planets and the sun and the moon back in the day when people didn't know what was going on up in the sky. They would see the stars. They didn't know what the stars were, so they thought the stars were gods. And as they looked at the stars, they noticed there were these bright lights that didn't twinkle. And not only did they not twinkle, they moved against the background stars. So when you're watching the daily rotation of the stuff in the sky, you see the sun, you see the moon, and the stars, everything rises in the east and sets in the west. But the planets, they would change position in the sky with respect to the background stars. So the ancient Greeks called them wandering stars, and the Greek word for wanderer was planetes. So asteris planetes means wanderer. And particularly with Mars, for example, if you go outside tonight, if it's clear where you are, look toward the east and pretty high in the sky by the time it gets dark. So say around 6 o'clock, you go outside, look to the east, you'll see this bright reddish light that's not twinkling. That's Mars. And Mars is really bright right now because we just passed it in our orbit as we are orbiting the sun. And whenever Mars would get really bright like that, just before it would get bright, instead of moving against the background stars from west to east, it stopped its movement and then started going in the opposite direction. And it was in what we call retrograde. And early astronomers had a really difficult time explaining why that was happening, because the the way people thought back then was that everything orbited the Earth, that the Earth was at the center of the universe, because we didn't feel the Earth move, we didn't feel it spin. Everything else was just going around the Earth. But in reality, the Earth is what's spinning, and our perspective is just changing. But they couldn't explain why the planets looked like they would go backwards and then stop and then go forwards again. And Mars would change its brightness whenever it did that. So a lot of the early astrologers and so forth would say, well, the god of war is angry, because a lot of cultures attributed the planet Mars to be their god of war. The Greeks named it Ares, A-R-E-S. So they would expect all sorts of things like war, pestilence, plague, death, and stuff like that, which is kind of ironic that we have a very close opposition in 2020, and 2020 is the most jacked up year I've experienced in my lifetime, and I'm 53 years old. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so with all of that said, once we started applying the scientific method to our study of the sky, we were able to separate astrology and astronomy. So people still follow astrology and horoscopes and stuff like that, because those constellations, like, when is your birthday?
March 17th. I think I'm a Pisces.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sun back in the Pisces, originally 3,000 years ago, the sun was in Aries at about that time. Mm-hmm. Over the last few, because you're probably right on the cusp, because you're near, the 20th is when we switched.
Yeah, switch. Yeah.
So you're right on the cusp. So you could be between Aries and Pisces, because those two constellations are right next to each other. So 3,000 years ago, the sun was in Aries on your birthday, but now it's in Pisces, and it's probably just entering Pisces on your birthday, from what I remember. But anyway, I'm Virgo. My birthday is August 25th, but the sun is still in Leo on my birthday. It hasn't gotten to Virgo. But still, people attribute where the sun was at the time of your birth and where the moon is, like your lunar zodiac sign and stuff like that, to determine your personality or how things are going to go in your life. Like, say, for example, my wife, she's a Gemini and I'm a Virgo. Now, some astronomers say, or astrologers, sorry, would say, oh, well, Scorpios and Virgos and Taurus and Libras, they shouldn't, people of certain constellations shouldn't get together, and some are compatible. It's like, I don't know.
So you guys aren't compatible?
Oh, I don't know. I never really checked. I was afraid.
I checked for my past relationship and we were not, and I didn't want to think about it, but who knows, maybe. I mean, but I also checked for my grandparents' relationship. They were together for 50 some years, just because I kind of got into it for like 2 days. Like, someone told me about it. I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, because I started to explain a lot of my tendencies and whatnot. But then I felt like if I looked at other ones, it's kind of like, I don't know what that theory is called.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's
yeah. Sort of thing.
If you looked at Gemini and all this time you thought you were Gemini, and you looked at Gemini and say, oh yeah, I've got that. But then you realize, oh wait, I'm really Taurus. I'm not Gemini. Yeah. And then you look at Taurus and focus on that. That one will be the one that you.
Yeah, then you'll find something in your
Yeah. So, but anyway, so astronomy. I've always liked astronomy since I was a kid, because I've liked Star Trek, and my dad used to take me to the planetarium when I was a kid. So it was always something that fascinated me. So when I decided to do it professionally, I worked at the planetarium in Miami. Mm-hmm. Growing up as a kid, I started there when I was 14. I was kind of did a little intern apprenticeship type thing for free for a year, and then they had taught me my constellations, because I knew some of them already, because I was a nerd. Yeah. But I learned how to find all the hard ones, and there are 88 constellations up there. So when I look at the stars now, I just see pictures. I don't see just random dots anymore. It's kind of cool. And then and so when I was 15, I was offered a part-time position to work the planetarium on Saturdays and Sundays on the weekends. So I would do the shows on the weekends, and it was kind of cool. I was operating a $250,000 machine, and I couldn't even drive a car yet. So, but when I went cool. So I went to the University of Florida, majored in astronomy, got my bachelor's degree in astronomy, and minored in physics, and I did my graduate work at UF. And then since there were no planetarium jobs available, I decided to work in computer science, and I worked in the Office of Academic Technology for the U of Computing Help Desk. So I help manage the Circa computer labs. We don't even have Circa at UF anymore.
Yeah.
But and those computer labs, I think, are now starting to go away too, because everyone has laptops and stuff.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
understand.
Yeah, so I switched over to the University of Florida's help desk, and I helped run the electronic thesis and dissertation technical support lab.
Okay.
And we help graduate students complete the formatting of their documents to make sure that they're compliant with what the editorial office of the graduate school requires. And that's how I met my wife. She emailed me. It was funny. It was 17 years ago last week. I got an email from her on November 3rd, and she said that she needed help with her document. And I sent her the usual email I send to everybody else saying, oh, well, thank you for contacting us. Here is a tutorial on how you can use our formatting template. And then she emailed me back almost immediately after saying, no, I've done that. I need help. Yeah. So I made an appointment for her to come visit on November 6th. And it's funny, the first time she visited, she was, dressed in just the t-shirt, sweatpants, and a hat. But the second time she came back, she was dressed up like she had just come back from like a job interview or something. So she was off that first day, but she was working that second day. And when she came to visit, once she mentioned that, like, why are you eating all the time? Last time I was here, you were eating. This time you're eating. Because I was actually preparing for a bodybuilding competition in 2 weeks. And that was the Gainesville Bodybuilding Championship. And I had to explain to her I was in the last stages of carbohydrate cycling, and I eat every 2 hours. And I was, I believe, on a depletion day that day. So I told her, if I don't eat every 2 hours, I'll kill somebody. Yeah. Because I'll get hangry. But so anyway, I showed her, and this is before we had selfies and cell phones and stuff, but I had a digital camera. So I had taken progress photos of myself and put them on bodybuilding.com. So I showed her one of them, and she was like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, you want to go out? Nice.
Yeah, well, I was wearing my suit and tie and stuff, so you couldn't really tell I was a bodybuilder. Because when you lose that much body fat, you
look small.
Yeah, particularly if you haven't bought new clothes. So you're wearing all the clothes you wore when you were off season. I'll say that. I won't say fat.
You always look better when you're bulking in clothes, and then you look better, obviously, when you're shirtless, when you're shredded.
Yeah. So I invited her to the competition, and I ended up winning my weight class and winning the competition. So
nice. Like, there it is. Was that bodybuilding? Was that men's physique or?
No,
that was bodybuilding.
Right? Yeah, bodybuilding. We didn't have physique back then.
That's what I thought.
So all you had was bodybuilding, and then you had women's figure, and then you did have mixed pairs where you could have, if you and your girlfriend were both working out together and exercising, then y'all could compete in the same show together.
Quick side note, I kind of like the mixed pair stuff. I don't know why they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think it's just because the whole landscape of bodybuilding for women changed. Yeah. Because the women were starting to get really masculine looking, and I think the whole vibe of the culture changed. Like, for example, a lot of guys were starting to the numbers of people who were competing in 2003 when I won, it was starting to drop off locally in Gainesville, because everybody who was competing, they felt, you had to take steroids and growth hormone and stuff like that to get big. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have it seemed like you had to be a monster like Lee Haney or Dorian Yates in order to be able to compete. Yeah. So the NPC came up with the physique category, and then a couple of years ago they came up with the classic physique, which is kind of like bodybuilding was, but without all the crazy drugs and stuff. And then because if you've watched some of the classic physique, because normal physique, the guys wear board shorts like they're at the beach, so all that work you do on your legs, no one sees it. Yeah. I think that's kind of a waste. I spent 2 years bulking up my legs, and then they're covered. So at least if you're in classic physique, then you wear what looks like compression underwear, and then they can see your glutes and your separating your calves and hamstrings and so on. But anyway, my bodybuilding journey was quite interesting. I don't know if you want to guide the questions or anything.
No, you're good, James. We can talk whatever you want to talk about. You take the lead. I was just going to ask you really quick. Back in the day when you did compete at the Gainesville show, was that like a national qualifier, or did things change? Like was that
Okay, that show was a level 1, so it was a local
Okay.
show. So people from Gainesville and the neighboring counties could compete in it.
Mhm.
The Southern States, I believe, was a level 3, so that would be a national qualifier. So,
Gotcha.
so once you would, the rules in NPC were back then, if once you placed and won overall in a level 1 competition, you had to progress to a level 2, which was a regional.
Got you.
And then as you progressed upward, you would then compete in a national qualifier. And then if you won the national qualifier, you could go ahead and get your pro card.
I don't
And
think that they have like a lot of those level 1 shows anymore. I think a lot of the shows now is like they're mostly just national qualifiers. That's why I was curious, because the
yeah.
level of competition, I feel like at a national, maybe like at a national qualifier might have been a little bit more, like you said, leaning towards like people taking like gear and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
I wish they
Yeah.
did have more shows that were like kind of leaning more towards like the natural side, so people can kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
do it without having to feel like they're gonna get absolutely smoked if they go on stage. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Oh, yeah. One of the things that I noticed, the reason I started competing in bodybuilding was, this was back in 1992, 93. A couple of my friends one of my friends I went to college with, his name was Phil. He was in the Marines and stuff like that. And he was the type of guy that, he was only 5'7", but he looked stocky,
Yeah.
and he was always drinking beer and, talking and stuff. And he said, I think I'm going to compete in bodybuilding. We're thinking, you bodybuilding, Phil? So he said, yeah, I'm going to give up drinking for a year, and I'm going to start focus on my nutrition and working out consistently. And the transformation was amazing to watch him go. And he made this decision in January, and during the summer he bulked up from January, and then he started cutting in July because he had a lot of body fat to lose. So he started cutting in July, and the show is in November. So he started cutting, and he did carbohydrate cycling, and he showed me a book called Sliced by Bill Reynolds and Negrita Jade, and I still use that book because that was one of the first books that really talked about the cosmetic, the things you can do to improve the way you look on the day of the show. And
Yeah.
it was one of the first books that really talked about carb cycling. And so he went from 210 pounds, and he was only 5'7". He went down to 165 for contest day. And yeah, he was shredded. We said, Phil, you got abs. He said, well, yeah, I told you they were under there. I think he came in third place in his weight class, but he was middleweight, but he looked really good definitely compared to what he did look like. But I mean, he looked, by the time he was probably, I think by the time he was about 2 months out, about 8 weeks out, he was looking kind of like some of the guys that you train with, like Chase. Is that his name, Chase?
My friend Chase, yeah, like that, like
He kind
in
of he
in
kind of
shape
had,
but not there yet, sort of thing.
yeah, he kind of had that build by the time he was about 8 weeks out, and he just
That's
kept
good.
cutting and cutting and cutting until he had gotten down to, I think, about 5 or 6% body fat. He got really low, and seeing him inspired me to compete
Good.
2 years later, and he helped me with my cut, because those last couple of weeks are brutal. I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Every day.
You do
But
cardio and stuff like that, of course.
yeah, because I didn't have that much fat to lose because I was already thin.
Lean. Yeah.
During my off season, the heaviest for the show that I won in 2005, the heaviest I got was 180, and I competed at 165, 160, between 165, 170.
How tall are you?
So
Like 6 foot?
5'10".
5'10". Okay. So
Yeah.
that's,
So
I mean, it all depends honestly on your height, how like how much weight you put on, and how, not just your height, but how well you hold the weight. Because some
yeah.
people like they want to be like, as heavy as they can and then bulk down, but sometimes it just does a lot more damage than it does like,
Yeah, and also your bone structure too, because
Yeah.
some people, like when I cut down, my waist was about 29 inches in circumference, which made me look. I had a crazy V taper.
Yeah.
But some people, their pelvis is more blocky, so they don't get that tapering.
Yeah.
And then some people, a lot of my friends who I worked out with at Gainesville Gym, they were power lifters, and the muscle density that they had developed doing powerlifting moves, they had good legs, good calves, shoulders, everything. They were just very well balanced. And I said, like one of my friends, Chris, I said, Chris, you should really compete, because you don't have to go through all the struggles I went through just to put on muscle mass. Because I was 18 years old. I was only 125 pounds when I
Yeah.
started weight training. And it took me 10 years to get enough muscle on me that I actually looked like I could compete.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the nutritional knowledge that you guys have today. Because now you can Google stuff, you can watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
I had to get my nutritional information from either books at the bookstore or in magazines like Flex or Muscle and Fitness, stuff like that. So, but and the supplementation that we have nowadays and all of the studies and science that have been done on protein synthesis and
Yeah.
body fat and stuff like that, it's just amazing. But yeah, it's quite an interesting how everything has changed over the years in the bodybuilding field. And I recommend for those people who are interested in competing or doing something physical, like even if you decide to do like a Spartan race or triathlons, but competing in bodybuilding and fitness and shape, things like that, that is kind of it's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to bodybuilding. Because most people who weight train, they don't go to the extreme of competing. But if you want to push yourself and challenge yourself to do something that you've never done before, because I'd always been thin, but and working out was not a problem for me. It was the discipline to change the way you ate by tracking all your meals, by making sure that you ate at the right time, you continued to supplement vitamins, multiminerals, stuff like that. And a couple of my friends said, well, you should take roids and then you get really big. I said, well, I don't want to take that and then feel that, okay, all of my gains were just because of the roids.
Yeah.
I want to go into it knowing that, okay, at least the muscle I put on is muscle that I did given the genetics God gave me.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of, not, I want to say cheating the system, but
no, I mean, like, unless like someone were to tell me that I would, unless God were to come down and tell me you'll be a Mr. Olympia one day, I probably would never take any steroids. Maybe if I'm like older and I need to take TRT or something, but
it's a replacement.
Yeah, but just to
also
take it, what were you saying?
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Because when you think about it, it's if God wanted you to be that big, because I look at because I think me and Ronnie Coleman, we're very close to the same age. I think he's in his early 50s as well.
Yeah, I think he's 51.
Yeah, I know Sean Ray is a little older than I am. He's like a year or two older because I was 16 or 17 when he won his first team competition. He won a team competition. Yeah. But nevertheless, I think it can damage your body. Because I see Ronnie, he's had to have leg surgeries and so forth just because your body's not designed to put that much stress on your knees and your ankles and other joints. But in order for him to achieve the results that he did, he had to really push himself. So, of
course.
But but if you ever decide to compete, I think you do very well just being natural and
yeah, that's the thing. I was gonna throw that in there. I think that it's not that it's easy to compete. Obviously, it's very difficult. The harder part for me, and I feel like for most people too, would be trying to balance, because I'm sure you're still working during that time, right? Or you said you were. Like trying to balance everything else. Like if all you had to do was get up, train, do cardio, take a nap, maybe do another training session later that day, stretch, that'd be easy. That'd be fun. I would, if I was all the money coming in doing that, that'd be amazing. But there's like 1,000 other things you got to do. And then on top of that, you have to do all the other, that's what I feel like is the most challenging part for everybody.
Oh yeah. And two of my friends, Lane Norton and Ted Fletcher. I don't know if you've heard of Lane Norton. He has
Do you know him personally?
Yeah, he and I we met in 2002 when he was in college at Eckerd College, and one of his workout buddies was Ted Fletcher. I was Ted's best man, and Ted was my best man, and we all three of us decided to compete in the same show together. So I hadn't gotten married yet. I just met my eventual wife, and we were dating, but I had work and I was single, so it wasn't so bad for me. But both of them, they were trying to finish college. So, and Ted, he was on the baseball team at Eckerd College, so he couldn't work out to any great degree until he finished with the baseball season. And then Lane, he was trying to finish his initial bachelor's degree in, I believe it was biochemistry, and eventually went and did his PhD, but he still competed and did all sorts of stuff while he was earning his PhD. So it's amazing to me that he particularly had the discipline to be able to do that and accomplish what he has on a professional level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite, so you learn how to balance it. That's one of the things that when you read books about personal development and so on, I went to a seminar once and they talked about if you had an empty jar and you had sand, pebbles, and water, what you do is, or rocks, you put the rocks in first, the big things, the things that are important to you, like family, God, things like that. Then you put the things that are smaller after that, like pebbles, and pebbles fill in the space around the rocks, and you put sand in, sand fills in the space around the pebbles and the rocks, and you put the water in, and that fills in the rest of the space. If you put the water in first, you're not going to have enough room for everything else, and it's going to spill water out. So it's all about balance and figuring out what your priorities are. And if competing in bodybuilding is not a true priority, then don't do it. But if it's a priority, you can, it's just about planning and planning out your meals, planning out your day, your workouts, and making sure that everything.
So someone like myself, the reason why I haven't pulled the trigger yet is because I know that, well, first of all, I'm not trying to make any excuses, but just to me right now, I know that if I did a bodybuilding show, or I'll just say when, because I know one day I will do one, because I've been following bodybuilding since I was like 13 to 12. I've loved it my whole life. So I have to do one day. But if I do one, I want to give it like
100%.
100,000% to the point to where, like, if I'm jumping on that stage, I'm going to beat anybody within like the realm of like possibilities. Obviously I'm not going to become Mr. Olympia, but I want to be like on that stage so good that it's like, regardless of whoever else is on that stage, I'm going to win. It's just right now, the biggest priority for me is building Water Buffalo and doing stuff like this, the podcast, the gym, and the content and stuff. That's to me, that's my obsession right now. Training has come second in the past year and a half. So but, I still do it every morning, every day.
Yeah. So at this stage in your life, how old are you now?
21.
21? Oh gosh. To be 21 again. Man, that was like 32 years ago for me. Okay, so anyway, I would focus on building Water Buffalo training method. Focus on that, focus on your finances, making sure you're financially stable. Because I didn't compete until I was 28 years old. That was my first competition. And the night I competed was the same night as the Olympia. And I remembered a friend of mine telling me, say, you're 28 years old. You're competing for the first time at the same age that Arnold Schwarzenegger retired from competitive bodybuilding. I'm like, well, dang. But I didn't win my weight class until I was 35. When I competed I won men's 35 and over. And then the following year I said, this was fun actually getting to be in the final pose down with everybody. So let me go ahead and compete again next year. And then, so I competed 3 years in a row in 2002, 2003, and 2004. And it was, it's one of those things that when you, the only person, you're really competing with yourself. Because a friend of mine asked me, well, you're going to be competing. Do you know who you're going to be competing against? And I said, well, it really doesn't matter who I'm competing against as long as I bring my A game and I feel comfortable that I have done my best so that I look the best I can look. Because I'm going to be limited by my genetics. So I'm not going to be the tallest guy there. So the guy who's 6'2" and weighs 200 pounds, of course, he's going to be in a different weight class than I'll be in. But eventually when we're on stage, I'm going to control what I can control. I'm going to control I'm good at posing. Because a friend of mine it's like, I don't know if you saw Pumping Iron. You probably have. Yeah. You remember in the beginning of the movie when Arnold and Franco were getting the coaching from the ballerina?
Yeah, they were like moving and stuff.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, his name is Truck. Well, that's his nickname. I don't think it's
Vietnamese guy.
Black guy. But he showed me how he posed and the fluid transitions between like a front double bicep and a kneeling, like a kneeling archer pose or something like that. Yeah. And it was just so graceful. So I said, okay, I'm going to try that. Because I learned the front lat spread is one of the hardest poses to learn because you got to
Yeah.
have to learn how to spread and all of that stuff. But once you've mastered the 7 compulsories, then you can work on transitions and stuff like that and be graceful. And the judges, they see thousands of people posing. So if you give them something to actually enjoy looking at, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this person is kind of graceful. And you want it to still be masculine. You don't want to, if you're a guy, you don't want to look like you're a
Female.
woman. You don't want to be feminine, but still you can be graceful as you transition from pose to pose. So that was one thing that I used to focus on when I competed. And that's how I feel that aside from coming in at a low body fat and knowing how to pose and show my good points and hide my weaknesses, doing all of that helped me come in at the best. And it's a mental game too, because if you feel
100%.
that if you feel that you didn't do your best, you won't
Yeah.
carry that on stage. Like the judges can tell when you're confident.
Yeah, definitely. I like practicing posing a lot too. I had kind of fallen off of it for a little while, but actually the past couple weeks I've been kind of getting, because I just got a mirror in my garage gym. So I've been
Oh, good.
posing in that mirror. It's fun,
Yeah.
man. Like it's a whole other science towards like the whole weightlifting thing. And that's something that I really enjoy about bodybuilding is that posing is like, in my opinion, an entire other entity. Because you could be a really good bodybuilder. I have a friend of mine who's in very good shape, natural guy, incredible genetics. If he were to take bodybuilding seriously, he could probably be top 5 Mr. Olympia, no joke. But he doesn't know how to pose for shit. He shakes. He like, one arm is this way, the other arm's this way. It looks, can only hit 1 or 2 good poses. But posing, in my opinion, is like a whole, it's almost like an entity of itself.
And it's a good exercise. Arnold once said in an article that he would practice his posing at the end of every workout, and that in itself was a workout, because he said he would practice posing for like 15 minutes or more after a workout, because when you're standing there and holding a static pose, it's almost like time
under tension.
Time under tension, yeah, because you're flexing your when you're hitting a front double bicep, you're flexing your deltoids, your pectorals, your triceps, your biceps. You're keeping everything flexed, and then you're also flexing the muscles in your legs.
Yeah.
And so each pose you're hitting, you're trying to keep everything tight, and you're holding it for an extended period of time. Now, the hardest part if you practice your posing frequently in the off season, then by the time you get to when you're ready to be on stage, when I coached a couple of my friends, we practiced their posing in front of a mirror. But then in the last month, I said, okay, we're not going to use the mirror anymore. You practice and get the sensations of your body and see, because you're not going to be able to look at yourself when you're on stage to correct the pose, and you have to know that you're standing in that pose. So kind of internalize and feel what that front double bicep feels like, feel what the most muscular feels like, and just internalize all of that. And by the time you get up on stage, you won't be shaking, you won't be, now true, because you're in a depleted state and you might be low on water, you might tremble a little bit when you hold the pose.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. So because the muscles get tired. But either way, it's I think it's something that you could always do in your life. Because I mean, you're 21. You got I didn't compete till I was 28. I didn't win overall till I was 35. If you take good care of yourself and you continue to exercise at the level you're exercising, you have to change a little bit as you get older, because you won't be able to do 300-pound deadlifts when you're in your 50s. Your body just doesn't work that way, because it takes longer to heal, because your growth hormone isn't where it was. But you will keep a really good looking physique for a good 20 to 30 years.
Definitely. And it's also about like, I just enjoy training a lot, honestly. I think training is like probably one of the best things in my day, if not the best thing of the day. And it just feels good. And I was going to jump on top of what else you're saying, like when you're talking about Arnold posing after his workouts. There is not a lot of scientific literature about posing particularly out there, like to help muscle growth or anything. But so we have 2 programs for Water Buffalo Training Method. The first one, it didn't have this in it. The second program was like a quarantine at home workout. And I actually had to do this. I actually came up with this because I had no equipment at my house at first. So I was like, how could I train at home for like these next couple weeks? And like, so for example, you can do as many pull-ups as you can do, but how effective after a couple weeks is that going to be? Obviously it's effective, But what I started to do and what I'm going to include, because we're doing like one more program before we kind of shut off the training programs, and this will be like our final training program sort of thing, and then kind of
Mhm.
move on to other
Yeah.
things. But I came up with something called PSF, which is like a post set flex. So after you do
Mhm.
every set, you're hitting some sort of pose after to kind of isolate that muscle isometrically. So like maybe
Mhm.
3 or 4 repetitions of like 3 to 8 second holds. And that
Awesome.
kind of stuck with me. So I've been doing that for the past, I don't know, I've always kind of done it, but almost in like a freestyle way. Like, you know,
Mhm.
sometimes you hit some chest
Yeah.
and then you, like a bench press, and then you
Mhm.
kind of like
And
hit
then
a
you,
little pose real quick. But I've been trying to do it more routinely. Also,
Mhm.
because some of the exercises that I have at my house when I don't go to a regular gym, for
Mhm.
example, like our lat pull down machine is great, but it's not as
Mhm.
smooth as like a LA Fitness or like a Crunch or something like that. So I
Right.
kind of have to like either take a band or kind of just do it on my own and get that. You know, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to like explain,
Mhm.
but there's like that one point of every exercise that if you
Mhm.
do it on like a cable, that you really feel that contraction of the whole
Yeah.
muscle. It's kind of hard to explain to somebody who hasn't felt it. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do it when the cable's not super fluid, or if you're using
Mhm.
dumbbells, or if you're using a
Yeah.
free weight. It kind of only
Mhm.
comes with like a pec deck machine or like a pec
Mhm.
fly or like a
Yeah.
cable row.
Yeah.
So I kind of
And
I incorporate that type of flexing to kind of make up for that loss of that, if that makes sense. That was a lot, but
yeah, that's a very good methodology. Yeah, the thing that I noticed most, because I started weight training when I was 17 years old. I was working at the planetarium in Miami, and I would sit there and daydream about buying a weight set. So I said,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to save up my money and buy a weight set. So I eventually bought one. And it was one of those, it was just a little home weight set. I only had like 110 pounds of weights. But then I took a weight training class at Miami-Dade College, and we had mostly Nautilus equipment in there. We didn't like it was selectorized machines like you'd see at Planet Fitness. You know, any gym has the ones where you take the pin out and you change the weight. It's
yeah,
not free weight. Um, then the coach who taught us, he said, you know, you'll probably see much better results if you transition from our class to an actual fitness center or gym that has
yeah,
free weight. Um, and then once I did that, and I could use free weights, I could use cables. And now, when I hired my personal trainer back in July, he's introduced me to elastic bands. And I never realized how much elastic band work can supplement all the other stuff that you do, because with elastic bands you can actually train smaller muscles that don't really get to play
yeah,
when you're exercising, because the big muscles take all of the work, and the little muscles like the teres major, that one may not get as much development as, say, the subscapularis and the rhomboids and the trapezius and so forth. So, and then with your technique of doing the post set flexing and posing, that will help to, it's like when you contract a muscle and you squeeze it for a long period of time, gets blood in there. It also helps to activate a lot of the, you know, the mitochondria and other things in the muscle that, let's say you only trained 80% of the muscle fibers, finishing off with those extra uh, contractions, that'll be, you know, hit the other
closer to, yeah.
15 to 20%. Yeah. So,
My theory is that like most exercises hit, like you said, probably, and this is all like, not saying that it's bro science, but it's not like factual, like there's not any studies on this, for so I know. I've tried
mhm,
to, there's a couple studies on like isometric holds and some research on that, but from what
mhm,
I've seen, there's not a lot of stuff out there that kind of takes, and I don't understand why they don't utilize principles from bodybuilding so much.
mhm,
If you think about it logically, like especially one of the things that kind of bothers me sometimes is like the whole protein myth about like you can eat too much. I think that there obviously you can eat too much protein, but when people
yeah.
say like I only eat 20 grams of protein per meal or 30 because anything else is going to be wasted. While that might be true, when you eat protein, not all of it goes
Mhm,
for your muscle. Your body uses protein for an
yeah.
immense amount of things. So
Yeah.
when
I'll use
people
it.
say I only eat 20 grams of protein because this study said that I can only absorb 20 grams for muscle protein synthesis, for the first part, a lot of the studies that they have out there on nutrition never kind of apply to people who weight train. It's usually with like regular sedentary subjects, so it's kind of hard to gauge in the begin with.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the mechanisms that happen in our body, they're not really explored because they're kind of like flexing post set might have no effect at all on muscle growth. It might not help you at all. So they overlook it because they'd rather look at something that's a little bit more wide, like actual exercises, for example. They'd rather put their energy towards that stuff. But I think my theory with the post-set flexing is that it's easy to miss certain muscle fibers when doing exercises because not every exercise is perfect. There's obviously areas of each exercise that you lose tension or you lose eccentric load, like a preacher curl, for example. It's really, in my opinion, only good for like the mid-range motion at the top also. But I mean, at the top too, unless you're using a cable, you kind of lose the tension because you're just kind of holding it on your elbows, resting against the pad sort of thing, depending on how your elbows are placed. So like there's missing parts to each movement. And if you're not being really strategical with what exercises you're doing, you could be missing muscle fibers that are, like, for example, for like a bicep peak contraction, you could be going an entire workout without actually getting those muscle fibers that help get that final contraction. Just doing like a quick, 3 or 4 sets of flexing in between each set could potentially hit those fibers, which one workout's not going to make a difference. But if you do it for 5 years, it could make a tremendous difference. It could be, so.
Oh, I think that was one of the biggest things that transformed my physique when I was in my early 40s was I started doing a variety of exercises for similar muscle groups, and I started to do exercises that some of my powerlifting friends did, but not to the same. I didn't do a lot of weight, but I do deadlifts, I do cleans, but I would have to be very careful with it not to injure myself because I would be activating muscles that normally were not engaged. But yeah, like the preacher curl, you'll feel that in a particular range of motion, but cables will hit almost a full range of motion because of the way that the machine is designed. So dumbbell flies, for example, you feel dumbbell flies when you're at the widest part of it, but not when you're at the top. But with cable flies, you feel it throughout the entire motion.
Yeah.
And then also with elastic bands, you feel more tension when you're at the
fully contracted.
With the contraction. Yeah. So it's quite an amazing thing.
So. And I like when people have like, that's one thing I don't really like about Lane Norton too much is that he kind of like discredits a lot of these little things that people do in a way of like, I understand why he does it because the science only really backs up like exercises that the science backs up. They don't look into like specifics like this. But real quick to bounce off what you said, I actually like using bands too. So I'm using bands in my house. For example, when I do chest at my house, I don't have a cable fly machine. So I'll do a dumbbell fly, heavy. So I'll focus on the bottom half and then I'll superset with a cable or a band fly to focus on the top half to kind of get that full spectrum. You know what I mean? Like a cable would have. So I kind of focus on the bottom portion. That's part of our training method too, is we do that a lot. We focus on like, because I like we were talking about, I think certain exercises are good for certain ranges of motion, but they're not good for the entire range of motion. There's very few exercises for each body part that throughout the entire range of motion is amazing for that body part, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, how tall are you and how much do you weigh right now?
My height varies. People say that I would say I'm 5'8", 5'9", but I don't know. I'm about around that height range.
And you're about 190 or 200?
I'm about 202 right now. The heaviest I've ever been is 228, which is a lot for my height. I look like a meatball. And the lightest I've been in, like within where I would like to be is around 180, 185. That's where I'm really lean and I look good. But it takes a lot of cardio and a lot of dieting to be, because like my body likes to be big. Once I jumped up to 228, it's hard for me to get under 200. It likes to stay around 203, 204.
Yeah, because your body, once you become an adult, your body will find an area where it likes to be. I've found that, like, the heaviest I've ever been is 184. I've never been heavier than that. I'm 5'10", and throughout my adult life, I've hovered between 170 and 180. And right now, I weigh 180, and my physique doesn't really change very much. I do notice that it's harder for me to lose fat now, just because I'm older and my metabolism is slowed down. But yeah. I'm very proud of what you're doing. And I was telling you before that I saw the beer bench press competition.
Oh yeah. That video was, dude, we're going to do it again. And we're going to go do like a tequila deadlifting challenge. I would invite you if you want to come drive down, but I don't know if you want to do that. But at the end of the month, the day after Thanksgiving, I think we're gonna try our best to do as many, because I want to get as many people there as possible. I'm gonna have it like open to whoever wants to come by. We're gonna do tequila and deadlifts, so that should be fun. That would probably. So we did the beer bench press, but honestly, it was great and it was a lot of fun. But I kind of wanted to see more people get a little bit more hammered, and we were kind of all fine after. We kind of like we were all good. We went to a restaurant after, like it was fine. I wrote a paper after actually.
Yeah,
And we
it
did
might have been.
8 beers each person. It was crazy.
Yeah, it might have been because think of what's going on physiologically in the body when you're doing exercise. So it could have been that.
I think that like what you're saying, more of like your body's response, fight or flight, kind of like gets rid of the alcohol quicker.
Yeah, you guys all had more adrenaline going in your system.
Yeah.
So the deleterious aspects of alcohol being a depressant and all that stuff, your body was processing all that. Now, did you notice that you had now alcohol suppresses the antidiuretic hormone, so it makes you pee more.
Yeah.
Did you guys after that notice that you spent more, you peed a lot afterward?
I don't really remember, but I know what you're talking about. When you drink alcohol, you have to pee. Like they call it breaking the seal or whatever. I think only one of us threw up. I was completely fine. I drank 8 beers and I don't drink alcohol. I've drank maybe 3 times I've drank alcohol this year, and that was one of them. I was fine after. I wrote a paper after, completely normal. I think Chase was the one who threw up once, but everyone else is pretty good. I mean, a couple people were like kind of a little tipsy or whatever. But the whole point of tequila deadlifts is that it's it's a little bit more to, because we're gonna get drunk if we do tequila and deadlift. So that was the whole point, to kind of have a good time.
Just be careful with alcohol poisoning because your liver has to process all that.
Yeah, of course. I don't think we're gonna do as many shots we're not gonna do 8 shots. We're probably gonna do like 5 or 6 or something. We should be good though. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna have like last time we had like 7 or 8 people there that were sober. So like I'll make sure that we have, we're probably gonna be 5, 6 of us again doing it, and then we'll probably have a couple other people maybe watching, and then some of our sober friends over there. It should be a good time though. Like I said, open invite if you want to come by by any chance.
Cool.
But real quick, I just wanted to hit on a couple more points on more of the astronomy type of field before we close out. I don't know. Do you have a little bit more time?
Oh yeah, you have time.
Okay, cool. So we'll kind of shift away from bodybuilding. I think it was a really good conversation though, and I hope that anyone out there watching kind of takes what James said, pretty to their mind if they're looking to do bodybuilding or they're just, training right now and they're, not really seeing things in a certain way. I think the perspectives we were talking about can help a lot of people out. I know it's helped a lot of my friends and a lot of people that are on the training program out, especially like when it comes to doing like certain contraction exercises and focusing rather on specifics. But I mean, not getting too crazy with the exercises. Like we're not doing anything like I don't know, one-legged Bosu ball squat or something crazy like that. But just, like instead of doing a dumbbell press one day, switch over to like a chest press machine and go heavy on that, because a dumbbell press is fantastic and it's probably superior to a chest press machine. But sometimes your body likes to switch things up. And I think it's important sometimes to put new stimulus, especially if you've been training for a while,
Oh gosh, yeah. One of the things I've noticed, if you add up the numbers, I started weight training when I was 18 and now I'm 53. That means I've been weight training for over 35 years consistently. Your body always gets used to what you're doing. That's how the muscles grow and hypertrophy happens. So I had to change my workout at least every 2 months. And then I have to do a dramatic change every 4 to 6 months. So like the workout that I was doing this summer was the most dramatic change that I've made in my workouts in over 2 years. Because you get into the same routine, your body's not going to do anything more to it than it needs to. So you'll because that's what we call plateauing, because your body has said, okay, well, we will expend as much energy as we need to repair the muscle damage, and he's not really doing anything to us that's going to make us grow. We don't need to grow. So you got to keep your body guessing if you want to continue to grow. And that's why I think it's even just changing the frequency of your workouts. I switched from doing one muscle group a day to doing 2 a day, but I changed it from a 5-day on 2 day off to a 3-day on 1 day off, where I would do chest and back on Monday, and then I'd do bicep and tricep on Tuesday, and I do legs and shoulders on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I would switch the workouts. I would do back and chest. I would do tricep and bicep, and then I would do shoulders and legs. And the first half hour, I did the first muscle group, second half hour, I did the second muscle group, and then I would go heavy on the first half of my workout and light on the second half. Nice. So Monday would be a heavy chest day and a light back day. Tuesday would be a heavy bicep day and a light tricep day. Wednesday would be a heavy leg day and a light shoulder day. Then I would switch it and do heavy back, light chest, heavy tricep, light bicep, heavy shoulders, light legs. And it was, and I could put a day in between there and rest and then do the heavy. So doing that, just little things like that, and changing the order of your workout, doing incline bench. I had trouble doing heavy dumbbell for a long time until one of my friends showed me how to get in position with it. Yeah. So I said, okay, for one full year, I'm not going to do flat bench barbell. I will just do dumbbell. And I got stronger and stronger. And I noticed that I did incline first. I would do incline barbell first before I would go to flat dumbbell, because the clavicular head of the pectoral, that's the kind of the weaker area. Because also you have to deal with shoulders and stuff like that. But if you start off with incline on chest, at least you'll be fresh for your workout. So you'll be able to hit it a little bit harder. Yeah. But after 1 year of doing that, by the time I went back to flat bench, I was able to my bench max was at 310. I was able to do 310 for 1 rep and 275 for like 5 reps. I was 30 years old at the time. I was like, man, I got the 3 plates on there. I'm the big boy club now. Then incline, I was doing 225 easily. I'd do 12 reps at 225. And I'm like, and to think when I started, I couldn't even bench the bar when I started when I was 17, 18.
Wow. Yeah, that's I used to do that a lot too. I used to push press before I did chest, because someone told me a long time ago, one of my old, like, I guess, mentors in the gym, that bench came all from shoulders, which it kind of does, depending on where your strengths are. So I used to do heavy push press. My shoulders are actually insanely strong for, like, that's my strong point. I could overhead press my body weight for like 12 reps.
Wow.
Yeah. So like that, and that leads to me having a decent bench too, which is nice. I was going to ask you something. I forgot. It has something to do with bodybuilding, but I digress. But let me ask you, let me change it up, if you don't mind, asking you this question, because I did want to ask you this before we have to get out the podcast. Kind of switching back over to the astronomy type of stuff. We talked about this in the car a little bit, and you might know where I'm going with this, but what is your take on aliens? I know it's a really broad question, and curious about it.
Okay. Yeah. I think I remember us talking about that. So,
I mean, bodybuilders are kind of like strange beings anyway, so it kind of segues into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've seen some freaky looking bodybuilders.
Yeah, they don't look human.
He has to be from outer space. So, in my study of astronomy and knowing how complex the universe is, and looking at the diversity of life that we have on Earth, at first we thought the Earth was the only place, or at least our solar system was the only place that really had planets. But now it turns out that there's a lot of stars out there that also have solar systems. And now we're finding planets that are Earth-sized, and a lot of those planets we find are in the habitable zone of their star. So statistically, our galaxy has about 100 billion stars. The Andromeda galaxy near us has over 1 trillion stars. And if each of those stars has planets, say each of them had between 5 and 10 planets, our solar system, our galaxy alone could have trillions of planets. And if just 1% of those planets has life, that's a lot of life in the solar system, or in the universe. So the thing that everyone wants to know is there intelligent life like us? Because there's intelligent life here on Earth, like dolphins, pigs, octopi, and chimpanzees. They're all smart, but they don't do what we do. They don't build things. They don't, and they communicate. All animals, I guess, communicate with each other, but we have become very sophisticated in our societal.
We're self-aware and we're emotional, and
yeah. So, and we express that, and we can, So, in order for us to, the big challenge is if there is, or if there has ever been intelligent life that was able to travel through space, that's the stumbling block, because we're looking for life, but the life that we're probably going to find may be microbial or bacterial or something on a very simple form. But we're going to try to look for star systems that have stars that are old like ours, because the stars that are really the big stars, like the supergiants and the stars that are blue and white, those burn through their source of nuclear fuel very quickly. So they don't live longer than a few million years. Then they go supernova. But if you look for stars that are yellow, orange, and red, they're cooler and they can live for billions of years. And if your solar system is fairly stable and you have a planet in the habitable zone, and that planet hasn't been constantly hit by meteors and asteroids and stuff like that, you could get life evolving to a significant level of complexity. Because think of it, life's been around here for almost 4 billion years. And when I tell people about how eventually the sun is going to expand and become a red giant and engulf the inner solar system, they say, well, what's going to happen with us? Are we going to be able to leave the Earth and go somewhere else? So I said, well, that's a long time from now. The amount of time that spanned between the dinosaurs dying and us coming along, that's 65 million years.
Oh.
Between now and when the sun goes through its red giant phase, you could repeat that span of time 80 times between now and when the sun does that. So you could have a completely different series of life forms evolving, dying out, evolving, dying out. During the Great Dying, during the Permian, 90% of the species in the ocean and I think 70% of the species on land went extinct because of the supervolcanic event that was happening at that time. So we're going to continue to evolve, but who knows if humanity will even be here in a million years. We won't, if we're here, we won't look the way we look. We may have, who knows how we'll change or evolve. But I think that if there are other civilizations out there, one, they're so far away from us that we might not be able to communicate with each other. And they may not have been able to conquer the physical challenges that we're trying to conquer, like traveling faster than the speed of light. Or if they did do that, let's say we were separated by millions of years. Let's say they evolved 5 million years ago and they were traveling through the universe and they found Earth and they said, oh, well, this is interesting. We got a whole bunch of mammals here, like woolly mammoths and stuff like that, but they're no humans yet, because we didn't really, proto-humans didn't really start becoming a thing until about 1 million years ago, and we didn't have recorded history until about 10,000 years. Between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago was when we started domesticating dogs, and then so
so it had to be like the perfect timing of both, sort of thing,
the
right. It would have to be basically almost like a miracle for us to.
Yeah, because like in Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff like that, you have all of these advanced civilizations living at the same time in the same galaxy with about the same level of technology. You have some that are really far behind and some who are really far forward, but the majority of them are all in that same time frame. In reality, that probably isn't the case. You probably have some planets that have life, but it's the way we were.
Yeah.
Like, think of it, 200 years ago, we hadn't harnessed electricity yet. So we didn't have telephones. We didn't have
It's equally
radio.
as possible to have civilizations that are more advanced than us, though, too, right? You think so? Or you think it's more likely to have less advanced?
Oh, yeah, there could be some that are more advanced. There's Carl Sagan, during the original Cosmos series, he talked about the Drake equation, where the probability of having a civilization or life grow to the point where they're an advanced civilization where we are, the chances get smaller and smaller as as you go further through the equation. So civilizations like ours would probably be very rare, but looking at how Earth was 3 million years ago, that's probably pretty possible. And definitely possible stuff that was like 4 billion years ago or 5 billion, when you have microbial life. Because we think Venus could have had life, but its conditions now wouldn't support life like we have it. Mars possibly could have had life. They're going to try to look for fossils of microbial life on Mars over the next 10 years that we go to explore.
Do you think we're on the brink of finding something great, or you think there's still like a couple hundred, or maybe a couple like decades away from finding that?
I think the first thing that we'll probably be able to detect outside of our solar system is we can detect chemical elements in other planets' atmospheres. Using the transit method, when a planet passes in front of a star, we can measure the chemical fingerprint in the light that reflects off of a planet's atmosphere or travels through a planet's atmosphere, and we could tell whether it has oxygen or methane in its atmosphere.
Nice.
And if we've noticed that oxygen likes to bind to other things, so like Mars doesn't have any free oxygen anymore because it's all bound up in the rocks on the surface, which gives it that rusty color. But here, oxygen is constantly being replenished by biological activity. So if we see molecular oxygen in a planet's atmosphere, that means something must be creating it. Otherwise, it would have bound to something already. So that's one thing we're going to look for. When we get to Mars, we'll be able to, when humans get to Mars, they'll be able to study the rocks a little more in more detail. So right now, we're looking for chemical signatures for water and possibly the remnants of biological activity. We probably don't have the resolution yet to really look for microbial life, or at least the fossils of microbial life, but at least it's a start. And hopefully within the next 20 years, we'll know. It's going to be quite a game changer once we find life somewhere other than.
Yeah, I think so too.
But there's a concept out there called panspermia, which is that, say for example, an asteroid hits the Earth, and when it hits the Earth, it flings rocks out into space. Those rocks could have life on them, like microbial life, like tardigrades and stuff like that. And then it travels through the solar system, and then it could land on another planet. Because we have meteors here, or meteorites, that landed here from the moon and from Mars, because we noticed the chemicals in them matched what we studied on Mars and on the moon. So it's possible that stuff from other places gets on other planets. So life here could end up out there, or life there could end up here, just in the solar system, that is.
It's probably a very deep conversation, right? Like there's a lot of talking points, I'm assuming, that come from this. I feel like there's endless possibilities.
There's a whole new study of exobiology, where people are studying the possibility of there being life elsewhere in the universe. So we didn't really have that when I was in college, but that would have been interesting to study exobiology and astrobiology.
I wanted to ask you a couple more questions if you have a second before we head out.
Sure.
Just real quick question. I'm not trying to be political or anything with this, but like for global warming, people talk about global warming. I think global warming and climate change is, I guess, an issue. I do think that there's some issues in the environment, but since you were kind of talking about earlier, you're talking about the different changes in the environment and how the Earth was here for such a long time, and I guess observing the patterns. What is your take on climate change? Not in like a political way, but like in more of like a, because everything's political now, which kind of sucks, but just kind of talking about it on like a scientific sort of,
Okay, so I think a lot of people, unfortunately, we confuse weather with climate.
Yeah.
Climate is kind of like your personality, but weather is like your mood that day. So things, you have a general personality, or like, say for example, if you're a nice person, you're easygoing and so forth, but every once in a while you get kind of upset. You're happy, you're sad, so forth. So climate is the long-term behavior of a planet's weather or atmosphere, but the individual instances, like for example, we are getting stronger hurricanes, and we do have more wildfires, and this could be just signals of how things are changing, because the temperature of the Earth has only gone up by a degree, but 1 degree in temperature can have significant effects on the temperature of the oceans and the development of hurricanes and so forth. So what a lot of people are concerned about is how much the Industrial Revolution over the last 100 years has contributed to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And by us adding more carbon dioxide than than the planet can
Take.
reabsorb and take back in, because we have oceans, and that's one difference that we have over Venus, is that Venus doesn't have liquid oceans, so all that carbon dioxide stayed in the atmosphere. So it caused a runaway greenhouse effect. Here we have a moderate greenhouse effect, but the oceans help dissolve a lot of that carbon dioxide, and then creatures in the ocean like phytoplankton and other creatures use carbon dioxide that dissolves in the water to make their shells. Like Florida, for example, is limestone. That limestone was originally carbon dioxide that was in the atmosphere, but when creatures metabolized it, it became calcium carbonate, which is chalk or coral. So all of the land of Florida was once at the bottom of the ocean. So the fact that people are concerned that if we dump too much carbon dioxide, it'll overwhelm that system and we'll overheat. So I think it's smart for us to pay attention and to not do more damage than we should. I'd like to see us reduce our carbon footprint, because it's better to be safe than sorry.
But when people talk about like the world ending in like 20 years, do you think that's kind of ludicrous as well?
Oh, well, I don't think climate change will cause it to end in the next century, but it will cause, by the temperature going up just a degree or two, that will cause polar caps to melt. The polar caps won't melt completely, but they'll melt enough that they can cause a change in the salinity of the ocean. It'll change the ocean currents. It can also change the sea level rise on coastal cities. So life will continue on the Earth. It's just that some of the human interests on the coastlines will be inconvenienced because all your beachfront property will move a mile inland or so. Also, California, like the deserts, if you notice, a lot of continents have deserts on their west coast, which I thought was interesting. Now, Africa, the whole northern half of Africa is a desert. And then you have a desert on the west coast of the United States, a desert on the west coast of South America. And some of those areas, like the Sahara, millions of years ago, it was quite lush. But from what I remember reading in a documentary, that had changed when the isthmus when Mexico and Central America, when that isthmus appeared, that changed the ocean currents, and that affected the climate in Africa. And that's what triggered the creation of the Sahara Desert. At least that's from what I remember seeing in a documentary years ago.
I think that's a very good perspective, James. I think what you said made a lot of sense and helps people understand.
Yeah, I don't want people, people shouldn't panic, but they should be aware. It's
I think so too.
It's like when your doctor says, you're pre-diabetic, so you should really pay attention to how much sugar you're eating and so forth. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow, but it means that if you don't do something, you could get worse. And you don't want it to get to the point where it's out of control and we can't fix it. So
exactly.
So awesome. It's good that people are concerned. I just wish, like you're saying, I wish there wasn't a political component. But you have to think, politically, it's all driven by economics. Yes. So when you realize that a lot of the wealth in the United States and other countries was built on the use of fossil fuels, drilling and selling of fossil fuels. So this would impact economic interests if you limit the use of fossil fuels. So people who have the economy of fossil fuels is their bread and butter, they're going to push against that.
Yeah. And I think that it's important for us to learn new ways and better ways to do things. I don't really have a stance on climate change politically. I do think that we have, like, obviously I see the emissions rising and stuff. I'm just not educated enough to know about it, but I don't see an issue with, like, if we can do it and we can create jobs in the other side of, like, more green energy, I don't see why that's an issue, if it's going to help a little bit or if it could help, but
everything changes. Like, for example, you're probably too young to remember record stores. I used to buy music on CD and stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
But then Napster came out like maybe 15 years ago, and the whole music industry was like, "Oh, you can't distribute music online because it'll cut into our profits and stuff like that. And then Apple said, well, why don't we team up with Napster and have an online service where you can purchase music online and stream it and download it that way. So now you don't even have to go to a record store, because that was one of the things that frustrated me, is if I liked only one song on a person's album, I have to buy the whole album for $17 when I only wanted one song. So now you can actually download a song, and it costs you $1 or $2, but then you don't have to buy the whole album, but you're more likely to buy other people's songs. And now, video stores, all those things, things change. So
innovation's key. As long as we learn how to innovate, people will figure it out. It's not going to be the end of the world type of thing if we switch away from fossil fuels.
And by the time you're my age, electric cars are going to be they're going to be a common thing. Like right now, we're kind of in the electric car renaissance, like we were in automobile renaissance 100 years ago, where people were out now starting to buy cars, because once Henry Ford started mass producing them, made cars cheaper so that everybody could get one. So nobody used horses anymore, because it was less convenient to have a horse than it was to have a car. So
history
eventually
repeats itself. For sure. This is going to be my last question, James, kind of tying up the whole podcast sort of thing. When you got into astronomy and you went to school for it and whatnot, what was like one thing that you really, really wanted to find out and you wanted to look into, and have you found that thing out yet? Or,
I think one of the things that I was really curious about was if there were planets around other stars. Because back in that day, we really hadn't started studying to see whether there were extrasolar planets, because we didn't have the technology yet. Because once we started getting the scientific processes for studying stars, like the transit method and the gravitational micro lensing and stuff like that. There are now a whole bunch of different techniques that have been developed in the last 20 years to study the light from stars and determine if it's a planet going around it, which I think is remarkable. That was one of the things that when I was in school, I said, man, it'd be really cool if we could find another solar system around another star, and if it had planets. I mean, planets that had life on it. Because one of the things I do with the kids that come to the planetarium is, with our digital planetarium software, we can actually travel to those exoplanets that we found. We found over 4,000 of them over the last 20 years, thanks to the Kepler mission, or the Kepler telescope and all that. But we'll go to like 55 Cancri, which is like 40 light years away, and we'll land on that planet, and we'll look at the same stars that we can see from Earth, but the stars are in different positions. So we were looking for Orion, and we found it, and Orion looked more like a baby buggy. One kid, she said it looked like a baby buggy. I thought it looked like a lawnmower.
Is this all simulation?
Yeah, but the stars are accurately mapped in the software that we have. Okay. But it's all simulated. So we fly there and we land on the planet, because it's amazing computer software. You can fly there real time at speeds that you can't do in reality. But once you're there, it's like, wow, Scorpius, a constellation that's right here, its stars are like one's here and one's on the other side of the sky. So, because space is three-dimensional, so it's like you're moving around and stuff. But to just be able to do stuff like in Star Trek, that's always been, I think a lot of us in the planetarium field, we always wanted to be on Star Trek or in Star Wars, things like that, where you get to travel the universe and see new things. And a lot of science fiction, a lot of it's driven by putting the human experience in a different setting. So like with Star Trek, a lot of the storylines actually paralleled what was going on in society at the time, with civil unrest and economic inequities and things like that. So they're able to put that in a space themed environment. So they kind of ignore all of the scientific parts of it. Because you can't really travel faster than the speed of light. But put it far enough in the future, you just dismiss that particular aspect of it. Because I think I was telling you on the phone, if you were to go to another planet and it had life that was complex, it's very likely there's probably microbial life that if you were to take off your helmet and try to breathe and interact, it could kill you.
Yeah.
Because heck, the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-2, that virus, we just started seeing it a year ago, and it's killed almost 1 million people, or at least 250,000 in the United States alone. But that's here. It's not like it's a space alien attacking. It's a virus here that's attacking us. So, can you imagine going to another planet?
Yeah, I'm bringing it back. It'd be
Yeah.
like a repeat of like when I guess like the Spaniards and stuff, they would come over here, and they
Yeah.
they wouldn't even have to fight them in wars. They just infect them with whatever fevers they had
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because then, it's like when you travel, if you're traveling to Africa, a lot of people have to get shots for the different things that,
You were
because
telling me that.
people are, in Africa, a lot of people are immune to a few things that would hurt us here, because we aren't exposed to a lot of the things that they're exposed to. So
For sure. Yeah, very interesting. We should have another talk one of these days. I'm sure we're gonna link up sometime in the future. But I appreciate for having you coming on the show, James. If you want to like give people your social media or your YouTube channel so people can give you a follow.
Okay. Yeah. You can post it also in the description of the podcast. My Facebook page is james.albury1. If you look up James C. Albury on Facebook, you'll find me. And on YouTube, I am James Albury, and look up The Sky Above Us. The Sky Above Us is the show that I do on YouTube, where I talk about what's happening in the night sky. And in December, on December 21st, Jupiter and Saturn are going to be so close to each other in the sky, they're going to look like one star, or at least they'll almost look like one star. They'll be closer now on December 21st than it'll be 1/10 of a degree apart, which is so close. It hasn't been that close since 1623. It's been like 400 years since they made that close appearance, and it's not going to get that close again until 2080. And I'll be 123 years old. You'll be in your 60s. You'll be just a little older than I am, so you'll get to see it again. I won't.
No, I'll be in 80. In 2080, I'll be 80. I was born in 1999.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You were born in the year Prince wrote that song about.
Yeah.
We thought the world was going to end in 2000.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so if you go to that page, you'll see I talk about those episodes. The episodes I write talk about stuff that you can see in the night sky, and I show you where you can find the planets. And we have little trivia bits where we talk about extrasolar planets and meteor showers and comets.
For sure.
Well, thank you for inviting me on.
Anytime, James. It was a great conversation. I'm sure in the future we'll do this sometime again if you have more time. I know you're a busy guy. We're going to probably get a video where I was working out together one of these days too, I'm assuming, when I go up to Gainesville.
Let me know.
Maybe we can do so. Maybe I'll come by the planetarium and check some stuff out.
Yeah. It's kind of like I'm talking to an internet celebrity. I've been following you now for so long. It's like, wow. It's like, Matt. How do you pronounce your last name? Wynn?
It's Wynn. I'm not yet. Maybe in the future. I don't really care too much about being a celebrity. I just want to make the water buffalo stuff become my living. As long as I can live comfortably, I could care less about how many people I have on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the same. You want to just feel fulfilled with what you do, you know?
Yeah. Because when my career with PBS ended, I felt there was this void in my life, and it's like, man, I miss being able to share my love of astronomy with people outside of my local town. So I said, with YouTube, you can pretty much you could have your own TV show on YouTube. So, and seeing what you guys are doing with Water Buffalo training method. And you got to tell your friend it's method, not system.
And all I know is that Water Buffalo training system, you got a giant cock.
Yeah. That's my friend Brandon. That's funny. I haven't seen him in a while. He's gonna come by one of these days to do one of our little workout breakdowns. We're trying to like ramp up some of the YouTube stuff because I'm getting down like the content creation aspect of things. I'm finally getting good at video editing to the point to where I can like knock videos out in like a couple hours versus like a couple days. You know what I mean? So
good.
We're excited. Things are gonna be great, and I hope to talk to you real soon, James.
Likewise.
For James Albury, I'm Matt Wynn. Take it easy.
Keep looking up.
Hey guys, thank you guys for checking out this video. We're so grateful to have you here on our YouTube channel. So make sure to check out all of our other videos ranging from a variety of different type of podcasts to our Buffalo barbecues. Check out our YouTube channel for constant updates on all the stuff that we have going on. You can also follow us on social media like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So check us out there. Water Buffalo Training Method. We're out.
And the motion of the planets and the sun and the moon.
I think you cut out. I think you put yourself on mute.
Find that. Okay.
No,
That's one of the challenges of, are you still
No,
there? Well,
no, yeah. Sorry, James. Let me go grab. I'm so sorry. I have to grab a camera thing for my battery. I forgot my camera is dead. Speaking, I would have enough time to go and grab my little cord, but it wasn't in my room. So, all right. Okay.